Me neither.
Before.
Everything's different.
We are recording and streaming.
Are we auctioning off the old mics then? Is that what we're doing?
I'm keeping them.
Are you keeping back
Just in
up?
case.
That's smart. How you doing, Chief?
Great yourself, Mr. Lee.
Not bad.
Good.
Not bad.
Hi, Chief.
No,
Okay, I can talk about
Mic sound really good.
that. Okay.
Yeah? Good.
They do?
Yeah, they're right.
Good.
Oh, okay.
Like you're talking behind me, right in my ear.
That could be good or bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we, I just making sure we set up, are we good to go?
yes, you're recording and streaming.
Tremendous. All right, we'll go ahead and call to order the finance meeting for Tuesday, February 15th. We have Cheryl is here, Chip is here, we have Jack, we have Chief, Dana, Bailey, Teresa, Dwayne and Pamela Seekman, and we have Doug Lehner as well. So moving on, action on minutes, January 18th, with any changes or adjustments?
I'll move to accept the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are accepted, 3-0. Chip, throwing it to you, Government Affairs,
Okay.
Representation, Consideration.
I've spoken with, I think, each of you about our need for government affairs representation. We cannot continue to do this and get the results that we all want. So we have to turn to people that know what they're doing. Having spent some time in the legislative representation business, I have been through their proposal for us and the scope of work, and it is right on. And I wanted to give them the opportunity to make a little presentation and then answer any questions you may have. We'd like to get this going as quickly as possible because things are moving. As I told somebody the other day, what would normally take 20 years, we're gonna do in 20 months. And that sort of puts the framework about how fast things are all gonna change. Our normal things that we thought were in pretty good shape are not. And we have to just accept the fact we're gonna be playing catch up for a while. And we need additional people added to our team. And so I'd like to bring the sequence up, Pamela and Dwayne, and let them do a little presentation, and then we'll open it to questions.
Sounds good.
I'm the first segment of segment, by the way, even though he had the name first. So Pamela Seekman, nice to see you all, and familiar faces. Thank you, Mayor, for having us and considering us. Just a little bit about me first. So I grew up in Champaign County, Urbana High School, and so very rural, although I was from the city. And I went to undergraduate school at Wright State, so I have a bachelor's degree in political science and pre-law. Went to graduate school at Bowling Green State University, a master's in public administration there. A BG alum?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two of us.
Two of you here.
I loved being there for graduate school. It was really good. So very small town to small town. And after graduate school, I moved to Columbus and started my professional career in the Ohio House of Representatives. I worked for Pat T. Berry and worked for him for a few years. He ran for Congress. I then left with him to run his fundraising for his first congressional race in 2000. And from there, the career went fast forward about 15 years of owning my own political and fundraising firm for various political, statewide, and national candidates. And then also lobbied for the Ohio State Medical Association. At the time, I covered public health, which at that, it was very boring. Now, fast forward 25 years, and here we are, and it's like the topic. So, know a little bit about healthcare policy as well. And then Dwayne and I joined forces. We met on a campaign in 2009. And I really wanted to get back to public policy, and so he came in and I was running the political arm. He was running the policy shop for a while. And here we are. Our firm covers a variety of legislative and executive issues. We lobby both at the State House and in DC, which is a great synergy, particularly right now, whether it's COVID policies intersecting. I've never seen more coordination with state and federal officials than now, than today. And even more so now as we have a massive infrastructure package that is going to be administered over the coming months. And so that affects all of the great things that you're doing here. A little bit of other areas we cover: real estate. Some of you may already know, we also represent the city of New Albany. That is where we live now, and we've lived there for almost 10 years. So I'll let Dwayne talk so I don't steal all of the.
Usually I let her go for about 10, 15 minutes.
And
and
then
I
he
just
starts.
go through about 2 minutes. But my background, I grew up in a small town as well, a town of 1,000. We were considered a city in Nebraska. So I'm from Nebraska, it was a city of friends, so small that had 12 other teammates on our senior year. So very small town, but I ventured out to Ohio because I found the people to be the same as the Midwesterners in Nebraska, but a lot more opportunity. So finished up at Ohio State my last couple of years, and a degree in mathematics. So likely, go on the tech field, but no, I went to work for agricultural trade organization, Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers, and was there for 16 years. Just back to my roots, growing up on a dairy farm, and that was made more sense to me and what I wanted to do. So I did that, their federal and international work for 16 years before Pamela and I joined forces in 2011. And as she said, our client base is very, very varied. So we also represent another municipality in Northeast Ohio, the city of Euclid. That's really on capital projects, capital budget projects. I know we've talked to the mayor and Bailey about that. So really helping the cities navigate the State House and building a case for why these community projects are valuable for that district. But if we want to go into,
Yeah, we can talk, I was gonna say we can answer
Yeah.
questions, we can talk a little bit more about other projects that we've worked on for municipalities or real estate or.
I guess, how can you help us? I mean, we need all kinds of help, but,
well, I think I'll take it. We actually started sitting in meetings with the city of Johnstown when Jim was here,
Oh,
Jim Leonard
okay.
was here, and the mobility hub, and what the action a year and a half ago we represented Etch, Darlene McGold,
Okay.
and so we were doing a lot of work in that transit, micro-transit, rural transportation area. That's really been our focus for the last 3 to 4 years, is in the transportation infrastructure
Okay.
space. We worked a lot with Drive Ohio, ODOT, the Transportation Research Center, the other TRC, not the TRC
Right,
here.
not ours.
In Johnstown. And that was along new technologies, autonomous connected vehicles, items like that. So we became familiar with Johnstown through our interactions with Jim and Bailey and just how we could help. But, in today's age, with all the new announcements and new things coming, we take pride in working for folks that really have an opportunity to change, but do it at their fashion, not enact change against their constituents, their residents, and items like that. And our work with the city of New Albany has been varied. It's really been focused on the State House tax policy. We don't represent NACO. We interact with NACO.
New Albany Company,
New Albany
Oh,
Company.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, but
the landowners.
Yes.
it's really the city of New Albany, so dealing with issues with police and fire, with tax policies, and helping their economic development move forward. And, we interact with One Columbus, the partnership, I guess that's the same, One Columbus, Jobs Ohio. Pamela's worked with JP Nassif for a number of years back in the day. And so we want to see this region not just overwhelmed. I think as residents in New Albany, we heard the announcement and we hear it's going to make another major city, and we're focused on what's it going to do for our traffic, what's our residents as well. And so we like what Johnstown stands for. I mean, our interactions back talking about the mobility hub and the opportunities, you were forward thinking before anybody thought of Intel coming to the region. And so just one of those items that attracted us to Johnstown. So
And I would just add on that specifically how we can be helpful is you have to, everything is hyper competitive now. So whether it's federal grants, state capital dollars, and using all of the resources that you have at your disposal and add to your teammate, as you suggested. So knowing how to leverage your local elected officials, and your federal officials to help advocate for you, constantly staying in their ear, bringing them creative ideas to make it easy for them, building that stakeholder group collaboration, and just really being able to advocate on your behalf, and then giving you that competitive edge, I think that maybe other communities might not have, or that you will need to put these massive collaborative packages together. And I go back to really this heightened level of municipalities and counties hiring advocates because of the competition for whether it was COVID dollars and how to interpret COVID dollars from the CARES Act, the American Rescue Plan, again, deciphering all of that, getting tweaks from the Department of Treasury on how funds can be used, asking the right questions, is this an eligible expense? So again, if you don't operate in that world, you might not know the right questions to ask. You all will impart your knowledge on us and tell us what the problems are. We'll all try to solve them together and bringing this, government piece as one of the tools in the
And
toolbox.
probably like you, New Albany, we're concerned with traffic. I know it's really considered Johnstown, what's gonna happen to us with the traffic. So we really need an ear and, what to ask for, grants to ask for,
I think from yesterday's powwow, we now have a sense that we're gonna have to be very active in getting to the right folks' ear, at ODOT and above, to make them sensitive to our concerns. I didn't get a feel that they were at all sensitive to our concerns. And it's not just getting people to the Intel plant, it's also getting our residents, as the residents of New Albany have an issue, getting them out to wherever they work and back home. And you can't lose sight of that.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. First of all, everyone has a massive stake, the governor being number one, that this project is successful. And so making sure he understands that, JP Nassif, Director Mahalik, they all have a very, this is their career, this is their legacy. And so if they can't make this successful and making sure you're successful, then they've got massive problems.
And
so
we
will make sure they know
We
that.
got word back, Jack, in a phone call he had today, that EPA has gotten the message. So,
Yes, we had of course, we're expanding our water and wastewater facilities right now, and a certain stream study that had to be done, the EPA's been off due to COVID, and we're trying to move into design in the next 60 days. And they said, well, you can't do anything until we have this stream study, and we are 3 years out on doing the stream study. Well, that's a big problem. So working with our engineers, prime engineering firm, Kerry Hogan, he's made some calls and said, Johnstown can't wait 3 years. We have this intel, we're gonna have a push here on our plants. And he said that, talking with one of the people who was working with the EPA, he said, we've got the word that with this Intel project coming, we're gonna cut through the political stuff, and they're still saying Johnstown's gonna have to pay for the study, which is normally something that the EPA would do at no charge and then give us permit limits. But they are trimming that study down, I guess, and costs for that study to try to help us get through. So it's not just the roads. The roads are important, but we have a water facility that's got to be expanded, a sewer facility that's got to be expanded. So supposedly the EPA is on board with this, trying to move ahead quickly, but time will tell.
Well, and I think that's a good point. The leverage that a Johnstown or Alexandria have may not be in line with a city of Columbus or a New Albany or a Dublin or a Newark. And so oftentimes the small villages or cities are just, they'll do what we want them to do. And so having someone, and our job was then to be at the table and to push back and to make sure Johnstown's recognized as a key player. Everybody's talking Johnstown's a key player. Well, let's put us on the map.
Reality.
So we're down at the table with everybody and making decisions together.
And that transparency is whether it's the city of New Albany or the city of Euclid, on things that we've done that hasn't worked before that, or does work, that you don't have to go through all the pains that they went through
And
before.
it's getting the members of the Ohio congressional delegation as well. You know, Troy Balderson needs to be that champion for the small communities in his district. And I see it when I did a lot of work in southeast Ohio, or eastern Ohio on some energy projects. They're like, no one ever comes out here. It's just Columbus. And those were complaints, but getting your member of Congress to push back on the state officials is going to be a key.
And Troy's been very good.
Yes.
I can't say not enough nice things. However, you know, he's got a whole district of communities that want his attention. And how do you get put to the head of the list for something we really need or want?
And part of it is we just stay chirping in his ear.
Exactly.
I mean, it is
It's a multiplier effect.
exactly.
And honestly, Intel's going to be at the top of his mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
For everything.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's.
And Intel will bring in a government affairs
It's
team
their
as well.
reality, yeah.
And that we'll be able to piggyback on that, so that'll be important.
Ben, you got questions?
I'm convinced on the need. What's the proposed arrangement?
There's a 6-month contract to start with, and it's $3,500 a month, or $3,000 a month. I gave you a raise already. I used to be in this business. I can assure you, this is the best deal I have ever seen. And I told them that I would have charged double if this was me, just to start. But anyhow, we appreciate that number. And it's I guess that basically the terms of the contract.
Right, and we, a lot of times when we work with companies or entities that have never had a government affairs team, they really don't know how to utilize them. And it takes a little bit of, getting used to and just building that chemistry as well. There's a learning curve a little bit too. There's gonna be some projects right out of the gate, like the capital budget, that we need to get running really quickly. Then we need to start looking at, the discretionary grants that we might fit in on transportation. So all of those things. So we price this generously, but we also wanted to do 6 months as well. So again, we could get our feet wet and you all could get comfortable with us, and then we can kind of move on from there. And hopefully you'll, learn how to better work with us, and we'll start getting, good results. And it outlines in there that we would be doing both your federal and your state work, and working at the executive branch as well as the legislative branch too.
So after meetings with us, would there be a projected set of goals, or?
We can absolutely outline, I think that we need to do almost like a deep dive into, what are the top priorities? What do you all wanna see? Each of you may be listing out, maybe you want specifics on the water side. What would a plan be around transportation? Do you want us to assist you in any meetings or calls that you're as part of a strategy team? Do we wanna, go through, or do we wanna be part of a team for a discretionary grant? So those could all be goals underneath.
And
that
we could,
establish.
if need be, put together a workshop, get everybody's input. I don't know.
For me, definitely, because I think the
do it.
success of any arrangement like this is going to be qualified by the ROI that we agree upon, kind of how
Oh, yeah.
we get there. What determines the successful, 6-month time frame? Understanding that there, are ramp-up periods and things like that.
I think that's the most difficult challenge
Right.
sometimes in a service-based, where unless we're directly getting a grant for you, then it's super easy. If we get you $500,000 to fund your amphitheater or something along, you're on a large transportation grant, or we help you get funds faster. I think metrics are important, in however you wanna determine how that
Yeah.
ROI is.
Any other questions? Doug, you got any while you're here? Okay. I'm gonna, I don't know how we're gonna do this, but we could make a motion to approve a 6-month contract that we will ask the council then to verify that and approve it. I'd make a motion to hire the Seekmans for the 6-month contract and get them started immediately. And we'll get it, the council to agree with us.
Okay, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Step 1 is done.
We'll bring it to council. The biggest thing though in my head is that ROI piece, whether metric based or otherwise, just so we can understand
Well, nothing,
what that
nothing,
long-term
nothing
is.
is success breeds success. So I think we have to.
But having a representative at the table is going to be the key. We have a seat at the table and we have somebody
Yes.
there constantly in an ear that is, talking up what we need, especially with the
And
intel
not just,
piece.
not just our state representatives and state senator, but those other members
Yeah.
that we don't necessarily know. And they don't know Johnstown at all. So it's broadening out the,
You know, just, add to that, if you all watched the Intel announcement in the audience, there's all these state politicians.
I was there.
reps,
Yeah,
I
we
know
were there.
A few of you were there. I mean, they're all wanna descend on this area to learn more about this. Mainly, how does it impact their communities from an economic development standpoint? We were up in Cleveland on last Monday? Yeah, last Monday
A
with
week ago today.
with Speaker Cup visiting one of our clients. And our client up there, who's in commercial real estate, does a lot of historical buildings in the city of Cleveland, was so excited that Intel was coming to Ohio. They're like, what does it mean for us up here? Even if it doesn't mean anything, it's still a great thing for the state. So I think being able to not just focus on your state senator, your state representative, but as you saw in that audience, there were a number of folks that want to be, how are we part of this development? And so they're going to be champions to make sure it's done right as well.
That's, I think, for me, it's making sure it's done right, but also ensuring that we are managing the impact relative to what we have here. Because, I mean, there's no secret, there are things that are within the city that need fixed with respect, I mean, water, sewer, we talked about those plan expansions. Streets is a perennial topic, 6237, we can
Congestion.
talk about traffic through town all day long and how that intersection ranks within the state and within rural routes. And having this is going to be great for everyone, but managing the impact relative to the identity of the city as well as the infrastructure and those that live here and work here, because it's, a mile away
Right.
from where we are, so we're going to feel it one way or the other. And having an ear of those to help them understand how that affects, I mean, Jersey Township directly, right? But anybody else from which is in that sphere to which people are gonna come and people are gonna leave
what's left.
forever.
Yeah.
So that's key to me. That's key to me.
And those are the kinds of things too, as we were even just having initial conversations from our work a year and a half ago on the transportation, the FTA piece. There are a lot of stakeholder groups, and we named them all, whether it's Jobs Ohio or the governor, that have a unique interest, well, again, in your success. And so if there are concerns or things, there are impacts that are adversely affecting us, we can communicate directly to them. They can then send out, the APB to get the study done or whatever, what do we need to do to make sure we're managing this properly? But more importantly, what does it look like? What does the impact look like?
Right.
What are we concerned about? What is the plan? What are the studies out there? And again, I talked about lessons learned. We know what Intel did for the San Francisco and the Silicon Valley area. What we need policy, what policies worked, what policies didn't, how did they manage it? The Arizona facility in New Mexico, like there is a place, a repository, somebody's done this before, so how do we capitalize and bring that here?
Or Ireland.
Or Ireland, yeah, let's do a field trip.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think
St. Patrick's Day's coming up.
I'll be happy to go.
But, I think, the governor, and I can't speak for the governor and any of the politicians, but they need to understand that, this is new to Johnstown or Alexandria, and your residents have a lot of questions. How do we answer their questions? and they have to be cognizant of that,
Right.
and they have to provide that assistance,
I mean,
whether
I think-
it's on what's it gonna do to water, roads, housing, just development in general, and that's what we can relay to them, that.
And if you can help magnify that, one of my chief concerns that I talk about all the time now is the anxiety of our residents. And that anxiety level continues to be very high. I'm trying to do all I can think of to help lower that, and I think giving them facts, I'm supposed to have facts, so sharing those facts with everybody I possibly can talk with and get that word out. And also to help negate the Facebook crowd that, as I said, don't let facts get in the way of a good story. So,
Well, it's gotta be more than, it's a $20 billion investment, the average salary is this.
Right, yeah,
It's
I
gotta be
mean-
more than that, and that's what we relay, as an agent of the city of Johnstown
Right.
to those politicians, that
Well,
you
one of-
gotta give us more.
One of the things that really concerned us, the meeting that the mayor and I and Bailey sat in the other day, is District 6 showed all the additional roads and lanes coming from Franklin County, Westerville, into and up to Green Chapel and the beach exit. And, you know, he made it clear, you know, we think 50% of the people are gonna come that direction. They didn't discuss the other 50% that we are very concerned is gonna come from the north and try to push their way through 62, 37, Mink Street. And not one single plan was made to upgrade any of those roads. Everything was all about the conversation from Franklin County to the site. The mayor made a very good comment that what about our people in Johnstown that are gonna be trying to get into Columbus, that work into Columbus? But a greater concern to us is, he did address the 50% that they think are coming from Franklin County. Well, where do they think the other 50% is gonna come from? It's gonna be the Mount Vernon, the Utica, those areas
North of-
driving into this site. Newark, and they're gonna try to push their way
Sunbury.
through Johnstown, and our streets are not.
Yeah.
So that is probably our utmost
They're gonna
concern.
compound the problem.
That
You
is
know.
our biggest concern, and we're not getting any money from this project. So, there we are.
There
So we
won't
had
be-
the same budget as we always, but we'll have all this extra traffic, so.
And I guess what I leave with, and because I had to look up some stats, is it took Johnstown 175 years to get to 3,000 people. And we're gonna have 3,000 people a mile away in 2 years.
Yeah.
As I said,
Yeah.
we're gonna compress
175 years to get to 3,000
20
Yeah.
years
people,
into
and
20
it's-
months.
So it's a big jump, it's a big
It is.
change, and I think we can use all the help we can get, especially in the near term, to make sure that we're
Yes.
front and center.
You all helping us identify who's not hearing and listening to you, like that meeting, you know, somebody, clearly there's a massive disconnect, and it's obvious there was a disconnect. And whether, and this is where bureaucracy cannot get in the way, just because it's one jurisdiction and one jurisdiction, you can't stop the line here. I mean, this is exactly what we saw with COVID policies, why the governor didn't make, you know, one county order and another county order regional, because the lines are intersecting.
Yes.
So that is a very, very big concern, that they're not talking to each other. So someone, immediately that has to rise up to the top to
Correct.
figure out this.
It was, the main speaker was Lloyd McAdams.
That's,
Yeah,
okay.
McAdams, right.
McAdams, yeah, McAdam.
And that's what I walked
And
away
he-
from that meeting was, you know, we were very concerned with what's happening in Franklin County and Westerville and how we're gonna get to here. No concern of the pressure that we already have on our smaller rural roads today.
I know we had a meeting with Congressman Gibbs, head of his transportation for the state, his district, and we talked about Knox County and the impact Knox County is gonna have for potential for Intel employees, because I think you saw it over the last couple of years, and we saw it all around the country, people moving from the cities out to the rural or suburban or exurban areas because they wanted to get away from all that, and I don't think that trend's probably gonna change. So they're gonna look north, they're gonna look east, and that's, so we gotta work on that 50%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We failed to mention too the stake that the lieutenant governor has in this, and making sure we're communicating with his chief of staff. And so, you know, you all giving us a readout and a briefing on that meeting, and then we start making calls and, you know,
Hey,
sending out
somebody's
the
not
alarm
getting
bells
it.
and figuring out.
Yeah, this side was forgotten in that meeting. I think very clearly, this side was forgotten.
Yeah, if there's supposed to be transparency and we're all in this together and, this is a regional project and I know certainly from the folks at New Albany and I would say One Columbus, everything they've communicated to us has been just that. But then you can't snap it back and
Right.
not operate that way, or the mid-level, career bureaucrats not operate that way.
Yeah, and you can't let ODOT go back to its normal way of operating.
Right.
They have to be sensitive, and they have to figure out some solutions.
But a list of priorities would be good that this council should come together with their main concerns, because as I said earlier, our other concern is, before we heard about Intel, we were expanding our plants because Johnstown was growing anyway. And then we hear this, well, there's gonna be a three-year delay, or Johnstown will have to lay out hundreds of thousands of dollars to do these tests on their own. Well, that can't happen either, because as the mayor terms it, the great land rush, we're meeting with developers every day, hunting ground. Can you get us water? Can we annex? Can we, nobody has any of this ground yet, but they're meeting with us to see what is there. Well, these plants can't go on a 3-year delay.
Yeah.
We've got to keep things churning and moving if we're gonna meet that demand as it comes.
Yeah, and there's no shortage of federal funds for water projects. The American Rescue Plan was focused on stormwater, clean drinking water. The state's gonna get their next tranche of $2.7 billion in May. Sharing those concerns with them, that $250 million project that the county engineers were able to tap in across the state was great, but there's some bigger concerns and bigger projects that need to be addressed, and this is one of those.
And the coordination is gonna be key on all of these fronts, so I think about, federally, with just looking at the bipartisan infrastructure, there's interagency, so not all the money is coming through DOT, you've got Commerce, Department of Energy. So just like this project, there has to be a special commission or working group that crosses all of the economic sectors and the issues that are gonna need to be talked about. And we keep hearing there's gonna be a roundtable, people wanna put this and that together, but that needs to happen where each section of concern, development or otherwise is in policy is addressed.
And what we think we heard kind of is, well, yeah, we'll talk about those streets maybe in phase 2, into phase 2 or phase 3. That's not satisfactory to us. It needs to be discussed in phase 1, how we're gonna handle this traffic, so.
Well, and I think that there are a lot of folks, New Albany has to be thinking that way as well. We need to make sure we're leveraging all of those assets.
And the good part is you're sensitive to those issues from representing them, that we automatically will get the benefit from. So that I look as a plus.
So we'll bring this up to council
Okay.
tonight. Are you were or were not planning on staying for council?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we can.
We were gonna leave, but we can stay. I don't know what's appropriate.
Our favorite restaurant's just down the street. so-
But they're not open on
Tuesday,
night.
yeah.
The only reason I ask is just
If
with
you'd like us to stay, we'll be.
everything that you have given us, there may be questions from other
Okay.
council members. And
Doug, what do you think? Would it be helpful?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
They can explain it better than what,
We can.
Yeah, better than me anyway.
if you don't mind, I think that would be great, to
That'd
be
be
able to
great.
answer that. And then I can foresee if this does go through council, setting up
Yeah, 'cause
a work session or something to be able to ideate on that list of things that we were talking
so
about.
you can stay with us.
Okay.
This is finance, and at 6:30 we'll go into council meetings.
Okay.
So
and we'll
you
get
can hang
you
out,
in
you
the
come back in an
beginning.
hour,
So there is
whatever you'd
some
like.
time if you would like to go do something else, because
So come back at we'll leave at 6:30 then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Works.
We'll just do that.
Could go to Wendy's or something.
Oh, excitement.
I know.
I don't even know what that is.
Is the old horse show?
Old yeah,
The old
they're
horseshoe
open.
shoes open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
Okay.
We'll see you in an
Thank you
hour.
both.
Appreciate
I
it.
appreciate it.
We have the finance director report and bank to book reconciliation. Anything, Dana, that you'd want to call out?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out,
Excuse me.
on the bank to book reconciliation, you may notice quite a large amount of loss from investments for Fifth Third Securities, 50,000 to be exact. I am going to be discussing this with Brian Carter next week, just to kind of get a feel on what's going on.
What do they got this sitting in?
It's money market, commercial paper, things that we're allowed to invest in, which is.
Right, I know we're limited in what we can
Yes.
do, but,
Keep in mind, we did earn about 75 or 80,000 in interest in 2019, I believe it was. So
Which we seem to be wiping out right
yeah,
now.
which this is,
And I did do a cash infusion a few months ago of $3 million into the funds to invest some more. So I expect to see this reverse and go to the positive, but I will get some more information from Mr. Carter.
I mean, we've had a successful relationship with Fifth Third, but if they can't, do better, do we wanna look around and ask they might do better, I don't know. Who knows?
Or, we already have some in parks, so.
Yeah, to
Maybe
explore.
Heartland or someone else. So can they not invest in stocks then, in a government, so it's what, Treasury, or what is it?
Treasuries,
Treasury, municipal securities, commercial papers, okay?
Okay,
CDs.
okay, all right,
Yeah.
but, yeah, it's
A lot
surprising we
less
shouldn't lose that
risky.
much, but,
Much less.
And if it's longer term,
Well, the maximum term is 5 years that we can invest. 5 years would be.
but if you're investing in bonds, those longer term bonds, with respect to the yield curve aren't necessarily
advantageous.
providing as they used to.
oh,
Yeah.
But it's not a small chunk of change that you have in there
But they should
anyway.
know that it's not providing the amounts that we are
Right.
used to getting.
But yeah, any questions, I guess, it was a good question to ask, that'd be good. Anything else in your report specifically that you wanted to call out? It looked pretty straightforward. And we do have a resolution on tonight that we want to get to. Okay. Nope, okay. All right, anything else, Chip and
No.
Cheryl?
nope,
The other,
Thank
next
you,
two
Dave.
items that we have on here are just requests that have been made to council that we're picking up to make a recommendation from finance, since they are financially related, to try and bring a resolution to these requests that have been out there for a minute. So the first one, Logan Malone refund request for his P and Z variance application. Everybody may know a piece of it. Bailey, I don't know, are you able to provide maybe some background into it?
Yeah, Logan Malone applied for a variance to allow for an event space located in the former church that is on the corner of Douglas and Main Street. That church is currently being used by Youth for Christ, and Logan was in an agreement with Youth for Christ that if his variance passed, he would purchase the property. His variance did not pass. It took a lot of considering from planning and zoning. They did their due diligence and considered, I think, a lot of, different things that really went into their decision. And they ultimately denied the variance request. So Mr. Malone has requested a refund of his application fee because his application was denied.
well, I could tell him right from the get-go, the answer for me would be no. I mean, he went through it, there was no promise that he was gonna get it, and we're not gonna start, if somebody's unhappy because they didn't get their application, we're gonna say, oh yeah, you can have your money back, no. They already took our time, so it stuck with say, I'm doing one of these today, but no.
And I'll be honest, Cheryl, that is pretty similar to what I communicated to him that evening in December as well, that it's, the fee is for various items with respect to reviewing the application, the execution of the hearing and things of that nature, but by no means is the application fee any kind of guarantee with respect to passage or acceptance or conditions that are favorable in one way or another. And so for me, and I think both of these kind of fit within it, it's a slippery slope kind of a conversation. And so I would be on the no side as well.
Okay, you just said it much nicer than I did.
No, it's-
And I,
Trying to get the
I
context.
completely agree. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Jack, do you have any?
No.
Okay. Any other comment? Anybody? Okay. Then as a motion from finance to council for recommendation, I'll make the motion to
Okay.
deny the refund request for,
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and then Joe Simonello. We have a fee waiver request for his second submission to planning and zoning. Bailey, if you don't mind.
First, I'd just like to clarify, I think his request was for a refund for his first submission.
Oh,
Is that correct?
I thought it was a waiver for the
I
second.
was under the impression it was for the second, okay. Joe Simonello applied for a preliminary plat, in March of 2021, so almost a year ago. The preliminary plat was for the completion of the Concord Crossing East development. That preliminary plat, has been discussed and reviewed a lot by planning and zoning and, staff here at the city. And there's been a lot of discussion and changes made on both the applicant side and planning and zoning side, just about what those lots would look like and what the development would look like. But ultimately, that application was denied, I believe in November or December of last year. Joe Simonello has since taken the recommendations of planning and zoning at that meeting where it was denied and made those changes and has made a second, application for a preliminary plat, which was submitted, I believe, at the beginning of January.
and how much has he paid and when did he pay that?
So the first time he paid a little over $19,000. And the second time, I believe he paid around $17,000. And the reason for that is because our preliminary plat application fee is $1,500 plus $150 per parcel. And so between the first fee that he paid and the second fee, the number of parcels on that preliminary plat has gone down. And so that's why the second application fee was a little lower.
Okay, so he's paid twice already.
Yes.
Okay.
And so he's asking for the waiver on the second fee, the 17,000.
But he has paid that second fee at this point, so it's more or less a refund on what was already paid.
Of the second.
Yes.
For the second one.
I don't know.
So, with respect to how those fees are decided, it's really based off of, there's engineering review, there's a lot of review that goes in on the front end. I think there's been a breakdown from staff time and law director time, and, you know, not to mention any other time that goes into these reviews for, go ahead.
Sorry, any engineering fee that is incurred is paid for by the applicant.
So it's above and beyond the fee.
Yeah, it's a pass-through.
Yeah, so
Okay.
anything that that the
That's right.
engineers have reviewed on this project, the applicant has paid for. So
We have
that
that, yeah.
It's just a pass-through, it's never in our account, I mean, it's in our accounts just until the engineer bills us, but it's never considered, funds that we get. It's a separate check and everything.
Yeah, he creates a deposit with us, he pays it, our engineers draw off of that deposit. If it needs more, he adds more. If there's any left, he's refunded.
Okay. So the payment for, and I think it was in the packet, the payment for the second application was,
17,200,
for the second application?
And they
Okay.
already had paid 19 something.
19,100.
Okay. And really, it's just based off it, you know, how much work goes into that, but those fee totals aren't just arbitrarily set, right?
You mean what we charge for?
Correct.
electricity? No, that's correct. Council passes those. Last time we did a fee increase for planning and zoning applications was in 2020. And when
similar to tap fees, capacity fees, and things like that within the sewer system, the minimums that are paid on usage, you know, you may not use that minimum, but it's there
It's
as
there.
a minimum. So for me, this kind of falls in that same realm, and it also feels like a slippery slope if we start looking at these through a lens that we're tracking every single minute against these. It feels like undue burden on staff to look at these down to the minute to figure out how much exactly, you know, is there a refund that's included? Should
Right.
you have that? These fees were set regardless of the application being submitted multiple times, as it's based off of lots. If the lots change or things change during the course of the deliberation, then that's justification for the time and the money that's being put into that to pay the staff to review things. Because it would still, as a second application, go to the engineer to review, right?
Well, preliminary plats don't really go to the engineers.
Okay,
Final plats do in the sewer and water plans,
but even as a staff,
it's just a parcel.
But they will have looked at it twice.
as a staff, you would, if you got a second submission like you did in this case, the second fee was less than the first because the plans changed between the first and the second submission, so you'd still have to take the time to review it
Right.
and look into it, which justifies the cost for the fee in the first place. It's just, at the end of the day, how much do you actually use of it is what the question is. So for me, that's a slippery slope.
You know, and since we could get many more applications here in the near future, we may want to, you know, be cautious on this and, like you said, not set, you know, where they can come back and say, hey, you did it for this person, so.
And if it starts with this, then what about all the other fees
I
that are
know.
included in there, or
I
any other
know.
request? I think the fee's the fee, and we just have to entertain it as it is and move on from that
Yeah,
point.
I agree with that. Just, he's gonna have to pay both.
Chip, do you have any?
I agree with that. The time was spent by the staff reviewing the submission, and it is what it is. I mean, he shouldn't have forced through the first one, if you want to look back and attribute it to something. It's the fact that should have, he spent more time and working on his submission and not rush it through. And might have gotten a different reaction. And unfortunately, he's not, I don't know how he's gonna receive that, but that's just the reality, is that you're gonna have to pay twice because it got submitted twice.
And at the same time, there could be those situations where we're undercharging based off the time that it takes to
Yeah.
review particular, you know, development
And,
application.
and you know, the extra 17,200, divide what, by 156 houses, you said?
I believe 157.
Oh, okay, that's $110 per house, so you know what,
Yeah.
he can make it up,
He'll figure out a way.
yeah,
So I'll make the motion to deny the refund request, or the waiver.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 3-0. So we'll take that to council tonight, too.
All right. I guess I'm on the hook for this one. We've had a number of employees that in the COVID-19, in January, February, and I had a conversation with Jack, I had a conversation with Dana, about could we just grant, with the easiest way of figuring this out, granted, we had done a blanket, I don't know how, if we gave actual hours, or just if you have COVID, we don't want you at work, we want you to stay home and protect yourself and us. And don't worry about your sick leave, we'll take care of it. I wanted to do I wanted to get input from people about if we gave an additional 5 hours to cover people that have been out and having either had COVID-19 recently, or they've had to be out isolating because they tested positive. It was a way of addressing that as everyone, not looking at specific cases. And that's what I was trying to get to with this resolution. I don't know how you all feel about it. I think it'd be nice if we did give them it's only 5 hours or
5 days.
5 days, 5
40
days.
hours.
And I just think it's a nice thing to do. They don't have to worry about whether they're using up their sick leave. We don't want them here because we don't want them exposing people. And hopefully this thing will be over soon and we won't ever have to visit this again. But that was where that's what I was trying to get at with this.
What we have done is if we went to the 5-day protocol. So if you have COVID, you're off automatically for 5 days. You can come back after the 5 days as long as you're not exhibiting any symptoms. You're supposed to mask up for the following 5 days. We've also had employees that their wife or their children have got COVID. They feel fine, but they've been
Exposed.
directly exposed. And so again, we've been following the 5-day protocol.
Okay.
Again, we had a number of people early this year which got hit with that little more, that Omicron
Yeah.
roundup. So they've seen this, coming out. I told them I didn't know if, this was gonna be in effect or not be in effect. I just wanna make clear that in this resolution, it's 5 days and only 5 days. So if you get COVID and you're off for 5 days and then 2 months later your wife gets COVID and you've been exposed, it's not an additional 5 days. It's a blanket 5 days. That's if you approve this, and then after that, it must come off of your regular sick leave.
How much regular sick leave does an employee get?
An employee, I think it's 15 days a year.
So this,
It's generous.
That's pretty good.
So where a couple of these fellows got hurt, and I don't know of any females that were involved, but the ones I know about were, we had 2 of our brand new employees who had no sick leave time built.
Oh,
So basically we didn't obviously say we're gonna terminate you for not coming. We knew they had the COVID. We were forcing them to follow the COVID protocol. So they had to go non-paid.
yeah.
So, and it was because they were brand new employees and they didn't have many sick leave.
will this be
much sick leave.
retroactive to them?
That's a great question,
Good
because I think
question.
like Dylan Lines.
Because that doesn't feel right.
He didn't have
Yeah, we
sick
could-
leave available.
The other way to handle that, we could have advanced them, the hours, sick leave hours.
We should make it retroactive. If
For the
it's-
beginning
if
of the
it's-
year,
If it's
you mean?
approved, it should be
Yeah,
retroactive.
let's do
because-
that.
Because the
It's not
protocol
fair.
is,
It's out of their hands.
it's out of their
Yeah.
hands,
Yeah,
it's
it's,
required. And I agree with covering the 6 days, from the employer's perspective. This is on an as-needed basis though, correct?
Right.
So we're saying if you have it, we're giving you 5 days?
No, this is a.
No, this resolution says,
Everybody gets this,
and it'll cover them for the rest of the year.
Okay.
right. It's like we did with the care package where we granted the extra sick leave for everybody. If you're sick, stay home.
But it's not as if it's unused, it's carried over into next
No,
year.
no, you
And
did,
they have to use the 5 days.
and they cannot use it for anything else.
Only for, so it's kind of
Yeah,
on an
it's-
as-needed basis, but it's
Yeah.
open to everybody.
Okay, so then I don't think that's what this reads, though.
No, it doesn't.
Because I'm not
This
thinking,
reads that
is that how you read it?
at least as I read it, every employee will gain 5 days.
That's
It-
how I understood it, so that's how I put it in the resolution, but obviously you read something else.
And then I also will say, I don't agree with maybe, here again, this is interpretations, this is why we talk about it. So let's say half the employees use it, they're exposed to COVID, they use their 5 days. The other half they don't get COVID, then it would carry forward, is the way I think this is set
For
up.
the rest of the year.
Yeah,
But,
no, it would die.
Carry forward.
It should die off at the end of the year.
yeah, but that doesn't say that
That
anywhere
isn't
in
what
there.
I don't
says.
think that's what it says, I think it
Section
says.
1 needs to be,
Understood it. I mean,
Okay.
if I don't get COVID or have to stay home 5 days, are you gonna take 5 hours off of my sick time?
and we're gonna take this 5 hours back,
Take it away?
gonna die.
5 days.
The 5 days is gonna, at the end, as of December 31st, drops.
Because I saw the validity using it on an as-needed basis, as if you get it and you have to take the time off.
You're
then-
covered.
Then you're covered.
But you
'cause
only
we
have
give it-
5 days one time,
and it
so if multiple
preserves-
family members, it's only 5 days,
It preserves your
one
PTO,
time.
but it's not an additional 5-day holiday time for anybody. It's if you get COVID, you're covered. If you don't, thank
It's
you
only
for not
for
getting
COVID, it's, and COVID or related isolation required by COVID.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not like I got a sore throat and I'm staying home for 5 days.
So I don't know if I'm there with just the blanket, everybody
I
gets
don't know.
5 days.
It just,
Can we add the wording on the pay stubs that says COVID leave 40 hours?
That's a possibility. I'm not sure how I could do that in our current antiquated system. Look at it. What I had thought this was going to do was to put a blanket 5 days of sick leave in everybody's bank, and it would be there, in perpetuity, so that it wouldn't necessarily go away if they didn't need it. That's how I understood it, and I thought we had the discussion that would be the most simple way to address this.
Well, we're trying to be simple, but I don't like the fact that if you don't use it, you can carry it over.
It wouldn't be PTO or vacation. It would be sick leave, and therefore it would be subject to the sick leave guidelines within our handbook.
If this is going to extend above and beyond COVID, then to me that warrants a bigger conversation. Because that's almost a handbook update, right? On the amount of PTO and your accrual and stuff like that, or what you start with as an employee. But if this is just COVID specific relative to the 5 days, then I think that makes sense to me as an employer.
So then it might be easier just to handle it on a case-by-case basis.
And that's what I thought it was, is opening up the option to say, if you have to be isolated 4 or 5 days because of this specific reason where it's out of your control, we got you for these 5 days, and the balance of your PTO is covered. And if you're new and you didn't have it, we'll still cover you,
5 days.
because that's also a part of what the
yeah.
the CARES Act and the ARPA money is supposed to go to, is stuff like this, right?
I think if we're going to go that route, that we should require a note from a doctor.
I don't disagree.
Good idea.
Okay, so with that said, the home test is not valid.
Well, they could provide a home test.
They could take a picture of it.
Yeah.
Of the test.
Sometimes it's
That
hard to
would
get
work.
a test anyplace,
Oh,
so
yeah.
the home test may be the only one you can get.
So our biggest fear of adding the 5 days blanket is, I've got a sore throat and a headache and I think it's COVID.
Yeah,
So
And it-
I'm gonna use this as COVID without any proof. Now, our only thing we'll have to step back on is if we're gonna make it retroactive. Of course, those folks don't have a doctor's excuse
yeah.
and would no longer have their COVID test.
But they had to be isolated, right?
Now, yes, they called and said, hey, I've taken a home test and I've got COVID.
I've got
And
it.
how many? Is it 2?
I think we've had 3 in the service departments since the first of the year. I think,
Maybe 4.
Chief, have you had anybody?
Yes.
Yes, Mayor, I've actually had half my staff, and just to be a devil's advocate on this one, the staff that wasn't affected are the ones that had immunization and boosters. So in a way, if you don't give this time to them, like you're penalizing them, and you're kind of saying, hey, don't get it, and maybe if you get COVID, then you can take 5 days off. Which I don't think any of my staff would feel that way, but it's not to say that anybody else would. In addition to that, those individuals that are receiving immunity, they're sick sometimes for 2 or 3 days. So maybe there should be some consideration for using some of this time to aid those people that are doing the right thing, for their divisions and taking those immunizations, even if they do make a meal for a couple of days after.
Yeah, I mean, we could broaden it out to COVID related, and I would think if you got sick from taking the shot, that would be covered. But I don't know what you guys think.
I'd be fine with that.
I was just trying to
COVID specific, I think, is where it lies with me.
Yeah,
keep it
me too.
and not and somehow if we can limit the 5 days going into your large account, and I don't want to do that. I want it to just be like at the end of the year, we'll look at it again, maybe, I don't know. If we've got another,
It's still around.
well, I think moving forward, it would be simple. if it's approved tonight, moving forward, it would be simple. You have to show us your positive COVID test or a doctor's.
Thing, or those two,
Thing.
3 guys.
The half of the chief's department and the 3 guys out of the service department, they have no way to prove it
Right.
at this point.
We'll just accept it.
I think you just gotta take the word. I mean, there's a certain level of honesty,
Yeah.
the honor system that you have to abide by for sure. But I think it makes sense if we're doing it tonight that you make it retroactive and it's,
Or do we need to delay this and rephrase it all and,
if it's
bring it
retroactive, I
back.
think that's definitely doable, in my opinion.
And then also being married to a provider, if you receive an at-home positive test, they generally will not accept you in the doctor's office because
Right.
they don't want you there.
That's right.
yeah, that's the
That's
problem.
true, yeah.
So, anyhow, what's
Mm-hmm.
your pleasure? I mean, it's your meeting, I'm just
I mean,
trying to get this.
Like I said, from this point forward, I don't see a problem, because you can take a picture of your positive
Right.
test.
Yeah,
You know, and you would hope you wouldn't go to the trouble to get somebody else's positive test.
Right.
You know, so I think from this
yeah, I
point
mean,
forward.
if you're gonna cheat, you're gonna cheat.
If,
No, no,
well, and that's true. That's
I know,
true. If you're gonna
but-
cheat, you're gonna cheat.
yeah.
You're gonna find a way.
I think-
My father always said, "A locked door keeps an honest man honest." He said.
I was
that's,
just
you know,
trying to come
If you're
up with
gonna,
an
if you're a
idea
thief,
that-
you're gonna break in anyway.
That's
I
right.
think it's
addresses
a valid
this
idea.
problem.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's probably best with the conversation we've had. We could probably bring it up to council and get some more conversation from them since it's
And
on.
then we'll
for
rephrase
tonight.
it and bring it back.
Yeah,
But if we
somehow
can
gotta
bring it
be-
back in 2 weeks, since it is a resolution, and then we
It's
can
not the-
word, if the general consensus too is that we wanna make it retroactive. At that point, we can maybe come back with some dollar amounts, cause I'm sure there's going to have to be some adjustment financially as well for any retroactive aspect to it.
Do we actually stick money in the account to cover the sick
Not
time?
money per se, but it would be hours times their rate of pay.
Right,
Hours.
but do we actually stick that in their account, or do we just?
Well, no, I mean, they would still be getting,
It's
up to
funny
80
money.
hours a
We-
week,
we-
so it's already budgeted.
It's on a piece of paper, but not in their check.
Well, in the case of one of the new employees, they went 5 days without pay.
And that's,
So
But
you're
that's
sim-
not
so
And
good.
you're
we should fix
so
that.
you're simply
Let's fix
now
that.
going to pay them.
Yeah.
It'll be
Yes.
added on.
that feels like the
Yeah,
Yeah,
right
that doesn't
thing.
feel right, yeah.
And it's that, to me, it feels like it's in the spirit of
That-
what this is
And
supposed
then
to
I
cover.
think one of the guys had 2 personal days. He used 2 personal days to cover part of the
Yeah,
5
see, that
days. So
doesn't feel right either.
again, I know
Give
this is
those back.
convoluted, but I think he should get
Let's
those
go
back
ahead and
then,
pay him,
and then gets the
Yeah.
5 days. So
Yeah.
we're gonna have to
adjust,
backtrack
adjust.
to see, who did what, how they used it.
So can we maybe have a recommendation from finance?
What I heard Jack say is that you get the new guys, would get paid for the 5 days off, plus get 5 days on top of it.
No.
No,
No.
Just get,
What you just said.
just get paid for the 5 days.
I'm not being,
If I did,
yeah.
that's not what I meant to say, but if it happened from the first of the year, because we're going retroactive the first year, they got COVID, they had no sick leave, they just went 5 days without pay.
We're gonna reimburse them for those 5 days.
And then they're
they
done.
have zero balance.
Yes,
balance.
because they got the 5 days. They got those 5 days
They're accruing as
back.
normal at that point.
Right,
Yeah.
I agree.
okay,
That's more clear.
Yeah,
but we gotta
Yep.
get that in here.
What I think maybe what confused it is they did have personal days at the beginning of the year. Some of them used some personal time, so they wouldn't have to go the whole 5 days without.
The
So,
gentleman who used the 2 personal days, we would pay him for those 2 personal days, but he would only get 3 sick days from here out for COVID.
no, I think what we would do is we'd put those back in his bank
Yep.
and pay him, so he would have his 2
His
personal
regular
days back.
salary for that
And just
time.
pay him for the 5 days, and then he's used his up.
Okay, that makes sense.
That way he could get his personal days back.
Yep, I agree.
Does that make sense, Dana?
Yes.
Okay.
so I think the recommendation from finance, we'll make a motion and do another recommendation would be.
okay.
Well, it
We
gets
can
into
have
a
this
bunch of little
conversation
nooks
tonight.
and
Yeah.
crannies there, depending on how.
And then
they
we
cover
want their
costs.
input and we'll
And we
bring
can
it back.
we can table it.
Yeah.
We can table it and then bring it back up, maybe with some
Recommendation.
new wording.
2 weeks work for Dana to check and see, does that work, I'm sorry, does that work for you to actually go back and see if you can add that line that says it's COVID?
I can.
Hours.
I can check. I'd
I
rather,
mean, I think from really do get COVID, you only have 4 more days
So,
left, and then the other one's on you.
I think the idea is to use them either in a block as the 5 days required by the
Right.
CDC, or
With a letter.
or if there are repercussions from a booster or anything like that, that you need a few days, but it's 5 days, period.
or you've been
COVID-related
forced to
specific.
isolate, or you've been forced to quarantine.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Because I think long run, it might be easier to track that way.
It
If it
would.
really is, if somebody comes in and says, Dana, here's a positive test, and you can like, 5 days COVID, you're good.
Yeah.
And then what if this, not wishing it on anybody, but what if it continues or we have another bad
Right.
strain with that line item on the pay stub, maybe beginning of the year, next year, we say, now we need to bump that up to 80 hours, and then you can add 80 hours.
Sure.
At the first pay for everybody that covers you through that entire year.
Sure.
And we do it on a year-by-year basis.
Yeah, I can certainly ask the question.
Okay,
Okay.
that's cool.
Does 2 weeks give you enough time to, you think that, I know your plate's pretty full. and-
No, but that's okay.
I mean, I understand.
I mean, at the very least, we can certainly adjust the resolution to
Okay.
do what we intend to
Okay.
do, it to do, and I can always follow up on the payroll
Yeah,
That's cool.
things.
Okay.
okay, thank you.
So I'll
Sorry, I
make the
don't mean to
motion.
add more to your plate. I know you're busy.
That's a good call out. The visibility and transparency would be a good thing. I'll make the motion to request, after discussing similar to how we did tonight, that we table this and bring it back up in 2 weeks
Okay.
at that point.
Sure, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 3-0. All right. It's a good idea.
It is a good idea.
That's,
Confusing, but good idea.
yeah. I was trying to get at a problem, I couldn't quite figure out.
Opioid settlement update, Dana?
I attended a webinar that was actually put on by Dave Reepenoff and Masood of some legislative board. And they basically went through the One Ohio initiative for the opioid settlement and the distribution of dollars. There is in your packet a group of slides that I took directly from the presentation. Let's go through them briefly. It was adopted in March of 2020, and this is like the mechanism that they have to distribute the funds to all of the local governments. The One Ohio MOU, that's on, there's a bit.ly website down at the bottom, a bit.ly link that you can click on and go to see the One Ohio Toolkit and get all this information there. But the major points are 15% of the money is going straight to the state of Ohio, and that's gonna be used for leverage statewide buying power for prevention and treatment and things like that. 30% will go to local governments directly. So Johnstown, we will get 30% of that money. And I had a breakdown at the bottom of what 30% could look like, and this, again, is just an estimate. I think, it's a little hard to understand, but I think it's that 18,573 amount, the direct payment to subdivision of 100%. I believe that's it, but I'm not certain. There's a lot of numbers going on in the One Ohio Toolkit. So 30% would come directly to the city of Johnstown. The remaining 55% would go to the One Ohio Recovery Foundation. And this foundation is going to allocate those funds to 19 regions within the state of Ohio. And the 19 regions, you can see on that color map of Ohio there, we are in region number 18, along with about 6 or 7 other counties. So well, let me ask a question. Has everyone submitted their request to Commissioner Bubb to be a part of the
No, I have not.
The deadline is today, in case
Oh.
you didn't see. There was an email that he sent out to submit your
Right.
information, your interest by today. But that recovery, that group, that foundation will be a lot of people. 6 members will be appointed by the state. 4 members are drawn from the Ohio General Assembly. 11 members from each non-metropolitan region and 8 members from each metropolitan region. So as you can see, there's 29 members of the board, 18 members constitutes a quorum, and they are going to vote on how this money is, how the money is distributed to the regions. So they want representation from each region, hence Commissioner Bubb's email requesting letters of interest. And they will get together and hash it out and talk about what they want to use, how they want to propose to obtain the funds from the state. And
Is there a requirement of ways we have to spend it?
yes, there is a requirement. Basically, it can be used for anything that is helping treatment, rehab facilities, anything that would be relevant to the treatment of opioid abuse.
Okay.
And if you do go to that bit.ly link, you can see all of the information. The MOU is about 70 pages.
Ugh.
It's a lot of information.
That's why I didn't read it.
Also, good to note that this money is going to be distributed over the next almost 20 years.
Oh,
So
geez.
it's gonna be a long process,
Not much each year then.
Yeah.
probably not. So right now, they're just gaining interest to see who wants to be a part of the, what do they call it?
It's a 20-year
Payout.
Yeah.
For $18,000.
Yeah,
I'll be dead
Doesn't
before
seem
then,
very-
so.
yeah, me too.
Now, that's just the 30%. Now, we could get a big portion of that 55% that's going to be distributed to
So
the
18 divided by,
foundation board.
18 divided by 20 is about our postage budget.
Yeah.
So treatment, and I assume treatment and education.
Yeah,
Yeah.
education certainly.
They're trying to avoid what happened with the tobacco settlement,
Yeah.
that the states got the money and spent it on all kind of nonsense. And
That's fair. All right.
I'll leave it at that.
We would basically have to do education because there's not much else we could do
So
here.
there's no treatment dollars
No,
there
yeah.
in reality. Not spread over 20 years.
No.
Well, it'd be good to look at, especially, I mean, when that does come to us over time. You'll be notified when that payout starts to happen?
Yeah, I would assume so. There's some registration and things that have to be done on our behalf,
So I
which
think-
I'll be informed of.
To Cheryl's point, I mean, because it has to be used for a specific purpose.
Yes.
So it will be something that we'll definitely want to make sure that we consider line item wise during the budget cycle, to make sure that it's assigned something every year or earmarked for that specific purpose.
And we may be able to accumulate it into a fund and
Sure.
not have to spend it immediately.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for the data and for attending the webinar. Appreciate that. Any other questions about item 8? We'll hit these next couple here real quick. Item number 9, state capital budget. I think everybody got the email about the submissions due by March 18th on things for the state capital budget. I think with respect to brownfield and demolition and things like that, I haven't seen anything that was really in the wheelhouse for what we might be able to apply for. And then at that point, I'm not sure really how much time we have to be able to do anything like that at the current moment.
But
Yeah.
Bailey has a couple
Bailey's
of
working
projects.
on a couple things.
Do you have a couple? Okay.
Preparing some applications for a splash pad in an amphitheater.
Splash pad
They
in
are,
an
they are,
amphitheater.
they
Where,
are
over at the,
designated.
At Hannah's Park.
Hannah's Park, okay.
oh, that's good.
And actually, what the Seacromans were referring to, I didn't realize they were coming tonight, but I just emailed them
Oh.
noon for some clarification, so.
Awesome. Okay, so good. So we'll have some applications then at least in that respect.
Yeah.
Because those were the only areas I think that I circled that might have some kind of relevancy or Parks and Rec,
Yeah.
Park and Rec space, so.
Yes, so we did have a nice meeting with, we were using Prime Engineering on this job, and they had many examples using the space size that kind of fit in our areas. They have designed different amphitheaters and a splash pad for the two different areas we're looking at. So I think we've set a time schedule, so we'll get the final draft the week before they have to
Good.
be in.
Yeah,
And
actually,
get that
we thought it
submitted.
was March 15th, but it is actually March 18th.
Okay, that gave us a little more time. Yep, let's work ahead on that schedule, so those two items are gonna go in. Now, will we get you know, you don't know, but we're gonna apply for it.
Hey,
Sure,
you've
that's
gotta
great.
ask.
That's great.
All right, good.
Hopefully we'll have people to help push it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That was a happy surprise. Appreciate the time and the idea. Very good.
I'm excited about a splash pad, so
Let's get it in. Okay, the next couple items, maybe 10 and 11, have to do with number 12, but with number 10, impact fees, it was something that we talked about at the latter part of last year. And we talked about moving forward with it,
Right.
but it's not a small project.
It's a huge project.
Because Pataskala, I think, was what we talked about, having incorporated an impact fee
Yes.
analysis and incorporated an impact fee, and
But we do need to do this because of the potential of
Yeah.
housing coming in.
as I said, based off of, assigning everything to the Intel project.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of impetus to get behind it sooner rather than later. My suggestion would be adding it to our list of goals.
Okay, sounds good. I'm agreeable.
And then same with the conversation around an income tax ballot initiative.
Okay.
Both of which are timely. If you had to assign one over the other, depending on the speed with which you would want to have something on the ballot, potentially, or have that conversation, the income tax fees may be something to talk about sooner rather than.
And that would be due in August, right?
Like August, the verbiage for November, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But I'm gonna suggest adding that to our goals as well.
yeah. And I would keep the first four
Correct.
anyway,
Yep,
from last year.
yep.
Yep. Moving right through that.
Any other business?
I have two things.
Two? Go for it, Dana.
Shouldn't take very long. I was approached by a member of the Greater Park and Rec District, Jeff Barr. He was wondering, while they are waiting on their 501c3 status to be approved, if they're soliciting donations to the foundation right now, and since they can't cash any checks, he was wondering if it would be okay and acceptable for us to cash a check and hold it in a separate fund or account and then pay back whenever they are able to set up.
No.
I don't know about that.
I
I don't know about the legalities of that.
Correct.
Who did they file their own
No,
501c4?
they had it pro bono done by Ice Miller.
Okay,
I think they're gonna have to get outside counsel on that. I don't think we can answer that for them.
I don't think we can,
It doesn't feel
Doesn't feel right, does
we
it?
can't,
like the right thing to do.
Yeah,
I don't think.
doesn't, yeah.
So it's not a no, but it's probably not.
Yeah, I didn't know for sure. I can check with the auditor of state and see if it's something that we can do if we had, I mean, obviously I would want to create a separate fund. for
Yeah.
that, So it wouldn't be.
Right, but
interfering with anything.
their long-term thing is that there'll be this foundation and that money can go directly to that.
Yes,
Okay.
but banks won't let you set up an account.
Right.
No, until you got the
IRS.
letter
That, which could take a couple of years.
at the current rate.
Are we able to ask those types of questions on their behalf? Because I think it might be better maybe for them to reach out
I
directly.
can, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Have them reach out to the
Let them
auditor.
do it. Pass it along.
Just, at the very least, the process is sometimes the education in and of itself, so it might
Yeah.
just help.
And then secondly, I had an email on February 7th from a Keith Davis from MC, and evidently Jim Leonard had signed a contract for $8,000 for an annual subscription to this MC.
What is MC?
EMSI. I can forward you all the
Well, it
email.
sounds familiar.
Was it M?
Yes, EMSI, yep, he did have a contract
That
with
sounds
them.
familiar, but I don't
And
know what it
it's
is.
for, I can't remember what they do.
It's something about developing, economic modeling and development.
Yeah, it's a,
labor market data and economic data.
Ah,
yeah, it's,
Now, here's,
Usually talks about,
that's for the mobility hub.
Oh,
For the grant, wasn't it?
it was for the grant, it was, and you have to be a member in order to get their
That's right.
numbers.
He keeps emailing me saying, we have 3 seats, we haven't paid the bill. So we apparently have 3 seats that can be trained on using this platform. So he keeps sending me emails asking me when to set that up, and I
ooh.
haven't responded.
So we have had this since the end of last year. It's
Yeah.
not been utilized
That's right.
at all, but we still owe $8,000, and it's automatically renewable. So,
We cancel within 30 days of the end of the year.
so we need to decide, is this a tool that's going to be used? It hasn't been used yet. And do we, I think we're committed to the first 8,000,
Right.
obviously. Is it something that we want to renew?
And would we need to ask our web folks, or our, mobility hub folks, if that's something that's useful to them going
Right.
forward?
That's my thought
I
too.
mean, the only login Jim Leonard said nobody knew it until I asked Dana what it was. So
Yeah, I don't,
look at it,
I mean, I know they gave us,
figure out how to use it, and I don't really know how to use it, so.
So maybe it's best to send a response and say, we don't have anybody at the moment to train on it, but to your point, we reach out to our partners and say,
and say,
is this data
is this useful to you?
Especially if we have the first subscription term that we have to
But,
deal
but,
with.
but that's the thing though, is I guess we get into there and see if it is useful, but it's 8,000 a year
That we're paying
that
for.
we're paying for
Yeah.
that isn't being used
Used.
currently.
If
Yeah.
you were to ask me today if we renew,
Which
I
we
would
should
say
have
no,
taken,
and then I'll
maybe we
No.
should
use
use
it
some
for
of
it.
that
Well,
LCAT.
that's where I was at. I asked,
LCAT's money to pay for that?
I don't know what the deal is with LCAP, what the.
If it's gonna be used.
The money that
Yeah.
that they gave us for the mobility hub, could we, use some of that to pay the
Oh,
8,000?
that was like $100 and some thousand.
Yeah, I know.
I would just double check that.
Or is there any left? I don't know. So,
I have to look.
I totally forgot about all those ancillary pieces from
Yeah.
the mobility hub.
I'd probably say
there were lots
not pay it anymore.
of.
So when does that
moving parts.
contract renew?
September,
So-
it was initiated September 21, so
So it's,
we're already 5 months in.
Yeah.
it's the anniversary.
and if we are gonna cancel, we've gotta get them a letter 30 days before.
So
it'd
let's
be August
start
21st.
45 days, 60 days before.
Well, that's what I said. I said,
Yeah.
if we determine that the information, we aren't using it, we don't even have to wait. We could put that letter in today saying,
Yeah.
you know, we're not going to renew the first of the year. I did ask Bailey to take a look at it to see if she could find, you know, with the city planning, if she could find any
Useful.
Useful,
useful information, and at this point, well, I don't think we've been trained on how to use it.
Right,
Is
that's-
step number one. But let's say it is gonna be used for the mobility hub, is that something Johnstown agreed to pay for year after year?
I think that's why you have the conversation
that
with the mobility
information.
partners,
just,
right?
yeah, we had to ask whether it's being used or would it be useful to them?
Yeah.
And, then we had to figure out, maybe Bailey, you have to have a conversation with them, and talk your way through with the guys, this, you know, explain this to me a little bit, you know?
Okay.
Okay.
Are those the only two items, Dana?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
Any other business?
No.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Adjourn.
we're adjourned. Okay,
Okay.
I'm gonna get ready for round two.
5 minutes, that works. And we got through the agenda.
That's good.
That is good.
Yeah, we got through
This
it.
is good. Well, did you go exploring?